Heidi ho, how's it go? Welcome to Whole Lotta Rich. I'm Rich Latta. Today we have a very special guest, returning champion Peter Wilson. Welcome, Peter. How have things been going for you?
Really great, Rich. Thanks so much for inviting me back. I always love talking music with you. And it's fun to talk music. I've been writing and recording and rehearsing and preparing for a major show in New York City next month where I'm headlining the bitter end, which is cool. But I've been just really in music mode. So it's kind of nice to take a step back and just enjoy and talk about an artist and a band that I really love. So.
Great. Yeah, I've been following you on Facebook, and it sounds like you've been staying very busy. That's very good news, Peter. Okay, so we are talking about Fishbone today. Fishbone is from Los Angeles, and they became known for their eclectic mix of ska, funk, rock, soul, reggae, punk, metal, and other elements comprising a tasty fishbone stew. They are crazy good musicians with a wacky sense of humor as well as a vocal social consciousness. Their first release was the 1985 single Party at Ground Zero, followed by their legendary self-titled EP. Their fame peaked in about 1991, and their star has gradually faded since then as musical trends shifted, but they never completely went away, and they just released a new album last year. So we are going to rate and rank their 8 studio albums plus the debut EP, which is more like a mini album, really. It's comprising 6 tunes. Peter insisted we include it, and I heartily agreed that we should. So, what is your background with Fishbone, Peter?
Wow. So I've loved Fishbone since the get. I first saw I never my family didn't have we were working class, so didn't have a lot of extra money, lived okay, but we never could afford cable until way later. Until like I think my parents got cable sometime in the 90s, early 90s or mid 90s. So I grew up kind of like, any music stuff or video stuff that you saw was either I was at a friend's house or my aunts had cable, had MTV, which was a big deal in New Jersey, or you would just kind of find it on the like cable access channels. And I remember there was a big channel called U68, which was kind of like this kind of back end channel that you got to see all sorts of cool videos. I think they were trying to compete with an MTV in the 80s. But what was cool about U68 is that they showed all the videos that MTV kind of didn't show. But I didn't know that, I just kind of knew what was popular and what wasn't. So you'd see popular videos, and then you'd see stuff like Prince or Michael Jackson, or Madonna or whatever it was. And then you'd see like they had like a heavy metal hour, or they had like punk stuff. So you'd see like the Minutemen, which was cool, they did a great video for This Ain't No Picnic, which I just assumed, oh, this is cool. Or you'd see weird early REM. So I saw this video late night of question mark modern industry, and it was Fishbone, and it knocked me out. The video was bizarro, the song was kooky, and it was like all these dudes running around in the video, and they were all characters literally. And I loved this song. I thought it was fantastic. So I just went down to my like local store, my Wiz or whatever, down where I lived in Queens, and asked for Fishbone. And people were looking at me like, "What in the world are you talking about?" So it became this joke. My mom worked in the city and she was in lower Manhattan, and she was just searching for it in stores, and we couldn't find it anywhere. And finally, it ended up one late night. I went to St. Mark's Place in the city. I was like, whatever I was, it was 13, 14. And lo and behold, I found this Fishbone thing. And even the album cover screamed out at me, where they're all jumping and looking cool and dressed. What was so cool to me is that they were also dressed kind of like this mixture of like post punk, kind of like new wave ska kind of look, but I got the sense that they were from the United States. I didn't even know they were from LA at the time. And I wore that EP out and I would talk about it to anyone that wanted to listen. And so I played it like religiously. And it was bizarre to me because I saw that they were on a major label, but no one was talking about it. And I was just playing these songs, and my friends thought they were like, "What is this? This is crazy." And you have to figure that that album came out in '85. So that was like the height of hair metal on MTV. And like I said, superhero like stars. So you had like the Springsteens, the Princes, the Madonnas, the Michael Jacksons. It was all that. And here comes this like album that didn't fit in anywhere, this EP that didn't fit in anywhere, and I loved it. So then I ended up buying anything I could find of Fishbone, but they were never featured in magazines, nothing like that. So it was really difficult to find out information about them. And then I started to realize all my skater friends and my friends as I got a little bit older that were into like punk rock and stuff like that, they loved Fishbone too. So that was super cool, and it became like this band that I championed and loved. And then I got really lucky and got into CBGBs when I was way too young to be at CBGBs, because I saw that Fishbone was playing a show, and that like changed my life. I honestly felt like it was like almost like it blew me away. They were just so incredible. I'd never seen anything like it. And like you said, they're a mixture of all these different types of music, and they were all fitting on this cramped little stage at CB's, and that began my journey. And then I just started seeing them anytime I could see them. And then later on, when I went to college, I got to see them play. They actually played they played pretty much an album of theirs, Reality of My Surroundings, before it came out. So they played a bunch of songs that we knew. By then, Fishbone had released a few records. This was like 1990, early 91. And they played a bunch of songs that weren't on anything yet. It was the new album. And I was blown away, and I was like, wow, this is going to be amazing. So, and then I got to see them a ton of times. I got to meet and hang out with Walt, Dirty Walt, and Angelo, and the whole gang, and Chris, and became friendly with them. And they were friends with other musicians I knew who worked with them. And so they were in my orbit for a long time, and they were just beyond awesome people as well, and creative and fun and sweet and what stood out to me about them right away was that there was no separation between, oh, we're on stage and we're these like rock stars. And by then they'd already been on MTV, they already been pretty popular and so forth. But they had no vibes like that. They were very welcoming, very supportive of other musicians. I remember because I didn't really even talk about being a singer, and one of them Walt had heard that I had a band, and he's like, "Oh, you got to bring me your demo or whatever." And I said, "Sure." And then he kept, every time I run into him, he'd say, "Where's your demo?" Which I thought was super cool. And I eventually gave him some of my music, and he was just super supportive. And Angelo was like that. It was really cool. It wasn't just like saying it to say it. And that made me love them even more. And it made me also understand them as writers, which is, we'll talk about in their albums. One of the reasons why I think that they're such an important band, and they often don't get talked about enough, is like lyrically, and musically, they're just really wonderful observers and kind of truth tellers of what's going on in their neighborhoods, how they grew up, what was happening in their communities, and being able to tell these stories in really poignant ways. And as I've gotten older, I like my respect for them has grown tremendously. And I know we'll talk about this, Rich. And I think it's amazing that they're still making really good, relevant records, even up to last year, which we can't say about a lot of artists. Even artists I really like, sometimes you're kind of like, you support it, but you're like, it's not really happening. I still feel like they're searching. So, I have tremendous respect for them, and they still live are just absolutely vicious. I understand. I remember reading in magazines that no band wanted to go on after Fishbone. I last bit of this story, I saw them in one of the Lollapaloozas. I can't remember. It was the one that Rage Against the Machine. I think it was '93, and I think Rage Against the Machine opened that Lollapalooza. And I believe Primus was the headliner, and apparently backstage at all these shows, Fishbone would go on somewhere in the middle, smack in the middle of the set in the big stage, and everyone apparently was arguing about who would go on next because no one wanted to go on next because they were so good, even with like a 45-minute or hour long set. So, we'll talk about them, but yeah, they're just really just seminal artists and really very important to me growing up.
Yes, indeed. Seminal artists. That's a good word for them, definitely. As for myself, a friend in high school turned me on to the Truth and Soul album, and that pretty much made me a fan. Regrettably, I never saw them live. So
You still have time.
maybe that will change. All right. So I think it's your turn to go first. Why don't you go ahead with your bottom album, Peter, your number
Yeah,
nine.
I will. Before we go into that, I did want to say this because I know a lot of people that check out your channel like start to say, "Hey, maybe I should check out Fishbone." I wanted to say that I was so happy that you kind of agreed to allow the EP in, but I wanted to tell people that are watching this that the thing with Fishbone is that they have a lot of EPs, like a lot. So almost as many EPs as they have records, which is kind of like you could be like, "Wait, what is this?" And that used to confuse me as well until I kind of like figured, okay, I get this. This is a single. This is an EP. Because even their singles will have songs that are not on their albums, which is super cool. So you never felt like you were wasting your money, like, oh, I'm buying this 12-inch and some stupid remix. They would have other songs. So they have the Fishbone EP, which we'll talk about. But then there's It's a Wonderful Life, which was kind of a Christmas EP that came out in '87. They have a great EP in America called Set the Booty Up Right, which is actually one of my favorites from 1990. And then they had an EP called Fishbone, The Family Hood Presents, and it's the friendliest psychosis of all. That was 2002. They have a really great one called Crazy Glue, which is almost like a record that came out in 2011. And then they had Intrinsically Intertwined, and that was 2014. And then they came out with an EP a couple years ago, just called Fishbone, not to be confused with the first EP that we're going to talk about. So I just want to tell everyone, yes, Rich and I know that there are a ton of EPs out there, but we said, listen, with artists and how we're doing this, with the exception of the debut, which, like Rich said, is a bit more like an album, almost has an album's worth of songs. The rest of the EPs, check them out. They're really cool and they happen throughout their career. But okay, so we're going to start. The first album, which is number 9 on my list, I unfortunately couldn't reach my closet for my CDs, so I'll just mention it to you. The first one is Fishbone and the Family Hood Nexperience present the Psychotic Friends Nutworks. Woo, what a title, Rich. It's a mouthful. So, okay, so the first thing is, as a fan, of course, I'm biased and I'm going to say that, well, all their stuff is good. Absolutely. Like, there's not a Fishbone album or release you're going to get where you're like, this is terrible or this is like not worth listening to. That's absolutely not the case. They're serious musicians and they care about the writing, so you'll always find gems on records. This is the only album I will honestly say a release that I kind of feel there was some control going on, and I think that a label, and they were on Hollywood Records, believe it or not, for this one release. And I think that Hollywood was really trying to get them to have a quote unquote hit. And unfortunately, in doing that, I think that they stifled a lot of what Fishbone is about, right? And so I felt like the production is very glossy on this album. I feel like the songwriting is a little too almost tentative or safe. And as we know, Fishbone is a lot of things. Safe is not one of them. That's one of the reasons why we love them. Um, so as a result, it feels like some of the fire that we know of Fishbone is, I don't want to say dimmed, but is definitely kind of being kept down to a minimum. So it's lukewarmish, if you will. And I remember it was an album, and I was working in CD stores in St. Mark's of the place, St. Mark's Place down in the village, and the promo came in, and everyone knew I was a Fishbone fan. They're like, "Hey, Peter, this is for you." I was super excited. I was like, "Oh man, it's been years." let me listen to this. It starts off kind of cool, and then it kind of just, it's very safe, like I said. Not bad, but I would almost say that in the case of Fishbone, that's disappointing because you want to be knocked out or thrown for a loop because they kind of do that all the time. And so this is kind of like the let's have a hit record Fishbone. And I think that they were trying, the label is trying to almost build them as being kind of like let's do what the Chili Peppers did, since they were, you know, they were colleagues kind of coming up in the scene in East LA and LA at the same time. They were kind of like, well, you know, the Chili Peppers are huge, so let's make them go more pop like the Chili Peppers. And they threw a bunch of guest stars on the record. They even do this kind of half-hearted version of Sly and the Family Stone's "Everybody's a Star," and Gwen Stefani sings on it, and it's just like, I don't know. It was kind of, maybe it was the Santana record, you know, that everyone was trying to emulate. Let's put a bunch of famous people and pair them with this great group, and let's have a hit. I'm not sure, but the record falls flat for me. You know, but even that saying, like I said, safe, flat, whatever. Is it terrible? Absolutely not. And some of you might say, oh, you're being a little harsh. I am, only because they're great. Like, I think this is the only record that's really like that. That being the case, though, I do want to say it opens with a killer cover of Shaky Ground, which is a Temptations song, co written, by the way, by Eddie Hazel. A lot of people don't know that from P Funk. So they do a great version of Shaky Ground. And then there are two songs that I absolutely love. One was the first single, it's called The Suffering. And that's like classic, really clever Fishbone. I would even dare to say it's kind of around the In Your Face era kind of Fishbone. Poppy but great, tells a really cool relationship kind of lyric. And there's another cool tune I call that I like a lot called Just Allow. I think that's also a really cool dancey up tempo song. But the rest of the album is okay. Like I said, it's an okay release. I never like saying something that's Fishbone is just okay or mediocre. But again, I feel like the record label and folks that were involved were trying, they had a little too much influence. And I think that the record falls flat. And I listened to it recently and was hoping to try to find, you know, like that awesomeness. I missed the first however many times I saw them, and it wasn't there. One last thing I do want to say about this record. I do want to say that when I saw the tour, though, they were fantastic, and they did a couple of those songs a bit differently than the recorded album. And I remember I was there with a couple friends, and we all were looking at each other like, why wasn't that the version on the record? Literally, they were known for that, and that says something to me that they probably had their hands a bit tied because they had been, by that point, they had been dropped by Columbia Records. They'd been picked up by another label, dropped by that label. So this was kind of, and this is their last major label release. So I think that they were, like I said, there was probably a lot of money here and really trying to make them something that they quite, which they're clearly not. So.
Okay, that's very interesting. I have a bit of a different take on that album. But you know, we all hear these things differently, so totally cool. Oh, do you have a rating for that?
Oh yes, sorry. So, oh, it's hard to say, hard to do this. We were doing a rating out of. Let me just make sure. We're doing them out of five,
Five.
correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. So I have to do this and just be honest with my soul. I give this, and again, this is because it's Fishbone, and I'm rating within the Fishbone, not overall, again, but within the Fishbone canon, I give this a 2.5.
Hmm. Okay. All right. My bottom, my number nine, is their fifth studio album, Chim Chim's Badass Revenge from 1996. This one gets off to a rough start. It begins with some spoken word nonsense that I assume most people skip. Then we get the title track, which is just okay for me. I think it has something to do with getting dumped by the record company and coming out on top with a new album on a new label. In the Cube is very good musically, but I find the scatological lyrics to be gross. So ultimately, I would rather just not hear this track. Beer Gut is amusing, though, a heavy, frantic song. Then we get another skippable spoken word track, and then a track with Busta Rhymes, which is just pretty good. I have heard some great things from Busta, but this time he didn't impress me much. There is at least one excellent song here, though, and that would be the catchy ska tune Alcoholic. Great harmonies and effective tempo shifts. The rest of the album is good to very good, save for one more skippable spoken word track. And Riot is an excellent short blast of punk rock. Monkey Dick is a wild, fast-paced rocker with some slapstick comedy horns. It's about jock itch or VD or some such unpleasantness. Rockstar is another one that blasts by at a breakneck pace. It rages against racism in the music industry. Prenut is a slow soul groove with customary over-the-top vocals. And finally, we get Nutmeg, sort of a party jam pep talk lasting over 10 minutes long, encouraging us all to fight for the right to party. It's a fun track, and it's good enough for me to go ahead and raise the rating to a light, very generous 3.5 stars for Chim Chim's Badass Revenge. This passes as a good album, but just barely.
Cool. All right. So we go to the next one. Now I have a physical one that can hold. So this would be my next one. I know Fishbone fans are going to yell at me because these are classic records, so I'll explain soon. But this is Fishbone in Your Face. It's my number eight. Um, Again, it's hard to admit that it's that low on my rating, but I want to be completely honest. So after the first EP, where I'm blown away, and I started hearing rumblings like, "Hey, there's going to be a new Fishbone album, full album." I'm super excited, and so "In Your Face" comes out. That's the record. Um, I'll admit I was a bit like shocked because it felt a little more chill and a little more like a pop record. So initially I was really disappointed by it. Even though I thought there were some songs I liked, I was a little disappointed. And this is my like youth talking. And then I left it alone for a few months. And one day I put it on again because I was like, let me check this out again. And I actually definitely started to say, okay, there's some great stuff here. I love this. And I got to see them on the tour. And again, the songs live were just fantastic. They really, really sung. So I started to realize, and definitely as I've gotten older and start to understand music and whatever, and production in particular, I realized that this record is actually a pretty awesome written record. But I feel it suffers again from production. It's almost like they squeeze some of the life out of it. Um, Probably again trying to make sure that this group gets on radio because Fishbone was so different. So I think that some of the production is to blame, and it kind of suffocates the record a bit. It's like almost too produced. But if you get past all of that, there are some gems on this record. This record has some wonderful songs. I love the first single, When Problems Arise. I think is great. I love the second track, A Selection, which is just a terrific track. I just love it. Classic Fishbone. Again, I think if it was produced a little more like the EP, which is a little more daring, it would be even more amazing. Um, and then and what I do like about this record, there are a couple of tracks that are kind of, the ambience of them are a little bit different. Like you can see that again, you start to learn that Fishbone is not afraid of writing anything, and that they write in all these different genres really well. People might laugh about this, but I see Fishbone almost like in the way I see Queen, even though they totally sound different from totally different areas of the world. But the idea that there's this fearlessness, like anything that we're going to do any type of music because we love it. And this is what we love. And it's sincere. And they just are such great songwriters that they can pull it off. And I always think that way about Queen. I feel the same way about Fishbone, that there's this like, hey, we're musicians and why not? We don't have to just write this or just be this. Um, and so there are a couple tracks on this album that are absolutely beautiful. One of them actually reminds me almost of Roxy Music, which is Movement in the Light, which is actually I think is a gorgeous, beautiful song that someone should rediscover and put in a movie. It's a fantastic, fantastic song. Very different than most of the stuff that Fishbone did later, but I love that they were really kind of trying to do something moody and different. And it closes the first side. There's another song that's kind of like that. And you see here some great Walter Kibbe high vocals in the background called "In the Air." Again, it's like kind of a moody, kind of new wavy, but kind of not. It's doing its own thing again. So there are a bunch of moments on this record where they're doing some different things, and you're starting to see them stretch out in cool ways. So I like it a lot. Again, I'm probably being a little harsh. I was a little harsh on it initially because that EP just explodes. This record is a little tamer. So once you get over the fact that, and again, if you're listening as someone that doesn't know Fishbone's catalog, you might hear it a little bit differently. But since I was listening as these records were coming out, I attached stuff to it. But getting a little bit of distance from it, it's a really mature pop record that I like a lot. And I feel like it's aged well, and there's some songs that are really good. But I think this album could have been quite great if it had been able and allowed to breathe a little more. So I would give Fishbone in Your Face a 3.5 out of 5, and a solid 3.5 out of 5. Again, like I said, I think production, just like it does with too many great artists, I think production kind of gets in the way on this record.
All right. Um, you obviously know Fishbone a lot more than I do, so if I get something wrong, feel free to interrupt and say, "Hey, actually, this person was singing that," or anything like that. So
Sure, no problem, Rich.
that's fine. I'm happy to have a conversation, but yeah, now it's time for my most controversial take. My number eight is their third album, The Reality of My Surroundings, from 1991. I'm sure many would consider this a stunningly low placement for reality. It's probably most people's number one. I heard this back in the day and it didn't click with me for some reason. I didn't remember why, so I was very curious to return to it. While I can't call this album anything less than good, I still have trouble connecting to it. I find many of these songs to be too busy, overloaded with things like crazy background vocals. It makes some of these songs come off as rather messy. The worst culprit is Junkie's Prayer, which just has too much going on. It's really a mess. Sometimes this approach hits and sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it doesn't. In some respects, this is a well-produced album, but they tried to cram too many things on it. I don't mind the interludes, and I like the If I Were I'd
Hi.
segments.
Mhm.
It's interesting because this was originally a song that was recorded live, and they took that recorded recording and divided it into four parts, which they interspersed throughout the album. Homework is a weird sounding ska tune. Behavior Control Technician is also weird and rocks out in a unique way. Pray to the Junkie Maker is a groovy, hard-hitting condemnation of junkies. Everyday Sunshine was a popular single back in the day, but it's just pretty good for me. Uh, Nasty Mayen is the most straight up funk rock thing here. So its presence is welcome, a song about sex. I never liked the word nasty in relation to sex, but some people do, so what can you do? Babyhead is another song about sex. Very weird, but it's just okay. The penultimate track, These Days Are Gone, is the best thing we've heard yet. Very, very good. It's got a groovy doo-wop thing going for it, and it rocks. But the last track, Sunless Saturday, is absolute gold. It's very heavy, sounding like a Yes track with some killer bass and keys. This is a five-star song. The last two tracks bring the reality of my surroundings up to 3.75 stars. Really good.
Awesome. All right. I'll come back to that one later. So, so my number seven, again, can't reach the CD, but Still Stuck in Your Throat. So this is an interesting record. I actually really, really love this record. So it's kind of funny that it's this low, but when you have so many great records, that's what's going to happen. But this was cool because I remember finding this record, didn't even know it came out. It was kind of like one of those things that I actually got a promo. It was a promo copy. I guess it was right before it was coming out. I didn't know it was coming out at all or anything. And I see it and I was like super excited. I was like, okay, cool. Let's see what they're up to. And Still Stuck in Your Throat knocked me out. It opens up with one of my favorite Fishbone songs of all time. I don't say that lightly. It's called Jackass Brigade, JAB, Jackass Brigade, and it doesn't let up. This is a really unrelenting record. So it's got like very hot production, but it's definitely a sonic choice. So it's a little bit like it's a little bit charged in terms of when you're listening, but it's to get you fired up. The songs call for it. It's very raw. I feel like they're capturing just great performances and they're very inspired. And so the first half of this record just like does not let up. And it's really great. It's leaning into their kind of hard rock and ska stuff in particular. And it's just like I said, they're just like knocking you out with great songs. And it also I can tell that they probably hadn't because they hadn't made a record for a while. They had a lot going on. They had a lot in the tank. And the songwriting is fun. It's really good. Of course, they haven't left their political side and what they're about. So there's a great like sarcastic song "Party with Saddam" on there that I've always thought was terrific, and someone should have made a video, especially at the time of when it came out. They have another song called "Let Them Hoes Fight," which I think is brilliant. It's really, really, it's what's so great to me is that this is Fishbone after being off major labels, getting kicked around, had done an EP before it. And, you know, a lot of people would just kind of at that point in their career say, you know what, let's just tour and, you know, and just do a lot of our old stuff. We still have a pretty big following. We can make money that way. But this is what separates Fishbone from most other bands and artists. They're true artists. So they sat around, the band was reconfigured, different members were in and out, and they said, let's write, let's throw down, let's put together a great record. And they did. And I believe that they recorded this record really quickly. My understanding was that they kind of went around, they worked up songs and they just recorded them, and it sounds that way. I wanted to mention in particular, Angelo is the main lead vocalist at this point. Chris Dowd was out years before, and Angelo sounds fantastic on this record. And I pay a lot of attention to because I know the range and the kinds of things that he does and still does. It's just really mind-boggling. But he really sounds reinvigorated on this album. I tell a lot of people, like, if you don't, this record kind of disappeared, unfortunately. It was on a small label. I'm hoping that they get the rights back for it and they release it because it wasn't released on vinyl. It was only released on CD and digitally. I hope someone gets the rights to it and puts it back out because it's a gem. It's one of those records when I've played it for people, people are like, what Fishbone album is this? Because they know it and they know it's Fishbone and it sounds so like uppity and energetic. And people are just like, you know, when I tell them, you know, this album came out a lot later and they're really blown away. So this is a great record. I wanted to mention that Stacy T, who's a killer guitar player who's back in Fishbone now. He plays on this record, and he's great. He plays a little bit on this record. And Rocky George, who was in Suicidal Tendencies, he is the main guitar player and writer on a lot of the stuff with Angelo and the other guys. And Rocky sounds great. So if you're a Suicidal Tendencies fan, you should check this out. Like I said, Spacey T plays solos in a couple songs, but it is a mainly Rocky George record. So a lot of the band members have changed at this point, but don't ignore it. Don't think, this is like, I won't like it because it's not the classic lineup. Nonsense. It's a great record. So again, still stuck in your throat, great title, and it totally captures the energy of it. So if I was giving it in my rating, I gave this a solid 4.
All right. Well, what do you know? My number seven is also still stuck in your throat. It's their seventh album, and it came out in 2006. I dig this one quite a bit. There's lots of great energy here and some excellent songs, including a cover of Sublime's Date Rape. It's a
Yeah.
perfect song for Fishbone to cover, and they kill it. The only song that doesn't turn me on much happens to be the opening track, Jackass Brigade, joining a list of albums that begin with a song I'm not so keen on. It does have pumped up energy, though, setting a good tone for the album. Next track, Let Dem Hoes Fight, is very funny, those lyrics making it somewhat of a guilty pleasure. Skank and Go Nuts has lightning fast vocals that sound like an auctioneer. Party with Saddam isn't really a great song, but it has a great vibe. And I love the lyrics, Party till Saddam's your friend, never drop a bomb again. So good. We Just Lose Our Minds makes use of multiple voices, making the track sound busy. With Fishbone, like I said, sometimes this sounds good and sometimes it sounds like a mess. In this case, it sounds good. Frayed Fucking Nerve Endings is one of the few here I would call excellent. It's a hyperactive tune that chugs along crazy fast. If I'm not mistaken, Angelo breaks out the theremin, something he's prone to do. Tremendous energy. Forevermore reminds us how great a singer Angelo is. The rest of the album is strong. So, in summary, it particularly hurts an album if it doesn't get off on the right foot, and this one unfortunately does not. Half of these tracks are at the 3.5 good level, three are fours, two are 4.5s, and Date Rape is a five. So I'm rating this album 3.75 stars. Really good.
Awesome. So we're in sync. Actually, this was the hardest part for me. My very top and my very bottom were not hard for me. It was these albums were really difficult for me around this middle part was the hardest part for me in rating and ranking Fishbone records. But with that said, I'm going to talk about a record that I love, and I love that it's their latest record. So I have Stockholm Syndrome next at number 6. This, and again, just because it's number 6, don't think that this is not a great record. I actually love this record. It's made me, I've always been proud of being a Fishbone fan, but as someone that's been loving this band for whatever, 40 years or so, to put out a record of that quality 40 years into your career, literally, says a lot. And also with all these lineup shifts and a lot of drama behind the scenes. And, I don't want to get into that too much because this is about the music, which is most important. I did want to mention it because it takes a lot as an artist and a human being to kind of be able to separate all the band stuff and things that you're working out and drama and being a touring band for 40 years, hard touring band, and a musician and a writer, and being on 3 different major labels and things just not quite happening like they should have, to be able to get together with people and band members and to put out a record that great, just says everything. My respect level is super high as a result, and I love the title. I think it's great. It kind of indicates in a really cool way what was going on behind the scenes without getting into it and without being messy. in the press. So kudos to them too. So as usual, Fishbone puts together, on Stockholm Syndrome, this like wonderfully eclectic and fearless record again. So they kind of, even this late in their career, they're kind of doing, there are a couple songs and some things that are a little bit different for them. Or they kind of bring it into the Fishbone stew, which I love. I love that I'm this deep in my career and I want to try writing songs that are a little bit different here and there. So there's still the classic Fishbone sound, right? You're still mixing the punk and alternative and rock and reggae stuff and punk, if I didn't say punk already, I think I did, hardcore stuff. It's just still a big stew. But then there are elements, there are songs that have like ragtime going on. And then there's some stuff that's almost a little bit, there's like some electronic treatments without it overshadowing the track. And what's so cool is it still sounds like Fishbone. It's not like they're totally going and trying to chase some trend. Quite the contrary, they're kind of bringing it into what they already do, which I love. Um, and I love some of the songs lyrically. Heavy stuff is going on. In particular, "Why Do We Keep Dying" like really hits me hard lyrically. It opens the second side, but the whole album is fantastic. There's some of their just really best poignant songs. "Dog Eat Dog" is great. I love "Suckered by Sabotage," just incredible. Chris Dowd, by the way, it's very important to mention. Chris Dowd, who is a founding member, keyboard player, is back in the fold recording. Many people know that the classic Fishbone lineup kind of got together, and then there were iterations of the classic lineup, and then it fractured before making this record. And so the two original members that are left in the band right now are Angelo Moore and Chris Dowd. And Chris is a great, not just a great singer and musician and keyboard player and trombone player and horn player and everything else. He's a terrific singer, and he brings and he's a really astute songwriter. And what's great about this record is that you have Chris also wrote a lot of the more serious songs like "Black Flowers" and "Now Those Days Are Gone" and things like that. So to have him back in the fold with Angelo, who also can write really bitter, quick, punchy lyrics and also brings a sense of humor to stuff. The balance in terms of songwriting, I think, really came into the fore here, and they do a great job on this record doing that. So then you have stuff like "Racist Piece of Shit," which is the first single, and it's terrific. And then another song like "Secret Police," which is talking about heavy issues, but still being kind of clever. Just a fantastic record. It made me really happy to see Fishbone really back in a good way. They've gotten a lot of press. This record charted, which was great. Again, it's an indie release, and they had this. They've been touring for about a year and a half, and kind of out there, and they're selling out again, which is just absolutely fantastic. So, but well earned. It's not just like, oh, we love Fishbone back in the day, we're going to see them. It's like, no, they just made a great record, and I'm going to check this out. And so you'll probably be seeing a lot of people maybe yelling at me that why is this higher than whatever. Well, listen to the record. It's a great album. I actually was listening to it again this morning, wondering did I place it too high, and I thought no, I didn't. It's worthy of that. It's a really good record, and I'm hoping that. And I also want to mention the younger players on this album are all terrific. They put in great performances, and lastly, I want to say the production is excellent. I think that they were able to kind of capture some of the stuff, Richie, you're talking about. Sometimes the manic kind of Fishbone sound, it's hard to capture, right? Because there's a lot going on. I think they did a really good job of keeping the energy and the rawness, but it's just produced really well. And so it's just a wonderful release, and something that I'm hoping people that are old Fishbone fans or have heard of the band, they check out. But Stockholm Syndrome to me it's number 6 on my list, but I would probably give this a 4.3. I
Okay.
think it's really good.
All right. Well, what do you know? We line up again. My 6 is Stockholm Syndrome. It's their eighth and most recent album. Came out last year in 2025, like you were saying. And it's just amazing that Fishbone came back 19 years after their last studio album to drop this one. Um, I have down that this album is self-released. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's total indie. They started doing that on their EP, which was
Uh-huh.
this one looks like the first album cover, but you'll notice it's like X'd out. So I'm seeing that they're both self-released, indie, like ultra
Uh-huh.
indie. Yeah,
Uh-huh. Cool. And yeah, like you said, only Angelo Moore and Christopher Dowd remain from the original lineup, but they assembled a fine new set of players to join them. There is great energy here, urgency even. They've still got it. I find Stockholm Syndrome to be very strong all the way through and quite socially conscious, including a song called Secret Police about Trump's ICE agent goons and Hellhounds on My Trail, an indictment of the prison industrial complex. Opener Last Call in America is a funky alarm sounding off about the sorry state of our country. Dog Eat Dog, you mentioned that. It's about a struggle for artistic and financial control in the music industry. Gelato the Clown sounds like vaudeville, while Why Do We Keep on Dying is straight up reggae with some cool guitar and horns. Um, I think you mentioned ragtime. That's kind of like vaudeville, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of that going on, like in like blues and ragtime stuff going on. I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Living on the Upside Down is a bouncy tune about an alien visiting planet Earth. The final track, Love is Love, is a very good ballad with great vocals from Moore and Dowd. Honestly, I rated each of these songs 4 stars, except Racist Piece of Shit gets an extra quarter star. I think that slightly stands out as the best track, and I love how it shits on Donald Trump. I'm giving this album a solid 4 stars. Impressive comeback.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's a really, and it's cool is I think, Rich, that this is one of those records. Like I don't just say, oh, it's a great record and I'll put it away. Like I want to listen to it a lot. I listened to it this morning a bunch and I was like, this is a great record. It's fun. I'm super proud of them, and it's really cool to be able to talk about a band like that that's still like really important, and they're putting out really great music that's like timely. That's just great stuff. So, with that being said, my number five, which also, like you said, might be a little um, controversial, and I know a lot of Fishbone fans might try to find me after this, but my number five is Truth and Soul. I will explain. Well, it'll explain. So when I say this, I hope people realize that I think this record is incredible. I love this album. And this was also really exciting for those of us that were Fishbone fans that really like them. And we're a little disappointed about In Your Face. Quite honestly, just felt it was a little tame compared to the EP. I remember when we heard their cover of Freddie's Dead, we were like, oh yeah, that now we're talking. And what's great is that I think that this album really is the first classic capturing of Fishbone on vinyl. I was seeing them, I saw them a few times before Truth and Soul came out. And I kept thinking to myself, they got to put out a record that captures more of this live thing going on. Because I kept thinking that the records just were not quite there. And even the EPs by then, were not quite like capturing what I was seeing live. Truth and Soul kind of does it. It's like it captures a lot of it, and it kind of just picks all these great songs and puts it together in such a terrific way. Their sound, their image, everything is kind of crystallized by that. Like this is Fishbone. I even love that the album cover just Truth and Soul. I love the title. I love that you see the logo. They look badass on the back. Total East LA'd out. And yeah, I mean, this record is great. I think David Kahn does a really good job producing and mixing. Again, David Kahn, if we didn't mention him, he kind of produced all their early stuff for years. And I think that he is also put in a very unenvious position because I think he realizes that I have like the best band in the world in my studio that writes the best songs and are incredible live. How do I kind of balance this in like bursts of energy, literally that is Fishbone, but still make it kind of palatable to radio listeners? It's really hard to do, and I can't imagine the big company like meetings and the yellings probably in the back rooms about Fishbone. And trying to figure out like how do we do this instead of just saying, hey, maybe we got to market it better and let them be them. But I digress. Anyway, this is a brilliant balance of like the influences too that are Fishbone. So you're starting to really see them go, hey, we're just going to try checking out all sorts of stuff. So whether it's like, Mighty Long Way, right? Which is just like a great pop tune with heavy rock and guitars, and they pull it off totally believable and they're all about it. Or if it's something like that's funky, like Ghetto Soundwave, which is this beautiful pop song, but it's really talking about really heavy, dark issues and what's going on in the neighborhood and the murdering of young black kids in the streets, and that's part of this ghetto sound wave that starts off really cool. And if you remember on the track, it kind of the track itself there starts to become this like buzzing where it's off, and it's totally saying something about what's happening, and that's not being talked about. And for them to do this on a big label, and this is like and to basically say, yeah, we're Fishbone, we want people to listen to our music, but we can't ignore where we come from and what's going on. It's really incredible. And then talking about just social issues that everyone can relate to, right? Like Ma and Pa, and just a divorced couple where the kids are really suffering, but make it a wonderful pop song that's kind of ska pop, just brilliant. Um, Question of Life is great. We talked about the if I didn't mention again, the awesome cover of Freddie's Dead, just fantastic, doing this like heavy rock funk kind of cover of a total classic Curtis Mayfield track, unbelievable. And then there's the bass extravaganza and funk extravaganza of Bone in the Boneyard, which is just like forget it. And live, it was just like it is to this day like such a centerpiece of what they do. So much so they actually did a whole EP called Bonin in the Boneyard. I don't know if people will be able to see it, but the EP was called Set the Booty Up Right. And it's basically this EP, which came out right after Truth and Soul. They had so many songs. And by the way, I don't know if you know this, Rich, they had so many songs for Truth and Soul. David Kahn was trying to push the record label to release a double album. If you know, well, you may not notice, but if you don't have this on vinyl, the grooves are very tight. There are a lot of songs in this record. I think there's like 12 songs. So the grooves are really tight, almost bordering on too tight. And they wrote another 6 to 8 songs. So he was really like, this should be a double album. All these songs are great. Labels like definitely not. They haven't sold enough to do that, which is a shame. But a bunch of the spillover tracks ended up on that EP, and that EP is like a remix. They do totally different versions and great resung versions of Bone in the Boneyard that are really great. And there's some other classics like Hide Behind My Glasses, Swinging in the Name of Swing. And what's the other one I'm forgetting? Oh, Love and Bullshit, which those are all great. They're as good as anything on Truth and Soul. So anyway, this is a very fruitful period. They're exploding in terms of their songwriting, and they're just becoming the Fishbone we know and love. So I love this record. There's just other records I love a little bit more. And I would argue, and I know I'm sounding like I'm contradicting myself, but I would probably argue one of the reasons why this is not slightly higher for me is just because, again, I feel like there are a few places where the production is a little bit safe. And when I say safe, meaning that it's leaning a little more pop than what I think Fishbone is. So I would say that that might take away a little bit of it for me. And I would probably also say it might have been that this record was played so much at every like high school and college party, probably the time for me it was high school. Like I heard it everywhere. So it was almost like Fishbone's kind of popish record. So I heard it everywhere. I still love it. It's fantastic. So with all that being said, I don't want this to kind of mar anyone's feeling of how I feel about this record. I give Truth and Soul a solid 4.3.
All right. Well, I am stunned at the low placement, but you defended your position well, so no complaints from me. Um, all right, my number five is the debut In Your Face. It's from 1986. I don't have a whole lot to say about it. It's an impressive debut. The band's skill as musicians is quite evident. The funky opener, When Problems Arise, has such a great groove. Love the bass and keys. That track is excellent, as is the easygoing, lightly trippy A Moment in the Light. I dig the synth bass on a selection, and the bouncy Charlie is very good. Give It Up has a positive message of unity. The second half isn't as strong as the first half, but nothing here is less than good. There is a really great mixture of funk, ska, and rock. Um, they would get heavier and more energetic on their next album, but In Your Face is very fun. I dig the laughter and horns at the end of the album. A fun way to finish. 4 stars.
Awesome. Yeah, I think you said something that's true. In Your Face is a lot of fun. It's a fun record, you know, for sure. It's a fun, light listening record. It's good. Um, all right. So now is when I was having sweat palpitations here on a couple on ranking these. So um, like I said, my number one was not in question, but these next few were really tough. So I'm splitting hairs here. You could even argue I was splitting hairs a little bit with Truth and Soul, but definitely these next few really tough for me to rank. But my number four is give a monkey a brain and he'll swear he's the center of the universe. So this is actually, I know for those of you that are big Fishbone fans, you'll probably be like, wow, where did you get this on vinyl? Yeah, this is really hard to find on vinyl, actually, and very, very difficult. And I found it actually right when it came out, and I haven't seen it since, to be honest with you. But it's a fantastic, fantastic record. Um, and this is the last album for a long time with the classic lineup, plus John Bingham, who joined during the previous record. So this is their biggest lineup in terms of physical people in the band, and the last one that recorded. This is the last album recorded by that classic lineup. So this record is really dense. It's unrelenting, and it's by far the heaviest Fishbone album in terms of consistency and heaviness of it. This is the first album with a different producer. So you have Terry Date. Terry Date, for those of you that are rock fans and hard rock and metal fans, Terry Date produced Soundgarden. He produced Prong. So a lot of you might be, he produced 24/7 Spies. A lot of you might be like, why is Terry Date producing this record? Well, Terry Date was a huge Fishbone fan, or is a huge Fishbone fan, and he decided that he really wanted to. This was the early '90s, '93, and when their last album didn't quite take off like people had hoped, even though it definitely was their biggest selling record, Terry Date kind of thought, let's like make this like really focus the band and maybe make it a little heavier, especially because that's what was going on around them. You've got to figure it's a Seattle grunge, so-called grunge scene, right? So you have the Soundgardens, Alice in Chains, even Stone Temple Pilots, the Pearl Jams and Nirvanas, and so on. And all these bands that sounded like that or kind of like it. So I think the idea from the label's point of view and probably from Terry Date's point of view is like, yeah, let's just, Fishbone rocks heavy. So let's just kind of lean into that. and see what happens. Not to say that the whole record is like that. There's definitely ultra Fishbone things, but the production is really tight and big and heavy, and like they're not playing around. The songs are longer, more or less. Like the song lengths, like in other Fishbone albums, the songs are varied. You have some really short ones, you have some longer ones, but these are generally pretty long songs, all in all. But it's really terrific. I mean, when you start off with Swim, which is like as heavy as anything you can imagine. And what's cool is that you have these heavy, heavy wall of guitars and the drums are huge, but yet you still have the playful, buoyant vocals and group vocals of, you have Dirty Walt on the lower end, you have Angelo on the top, you have Chris in the middle. So you have these like, and you have Norwood, who's a bass player who also sings. So you have this like wall, the vocals are insane and they're just really kind of bouncing on a lot of these tracks in cool, weird ways. And they're also playing around with their vocal melodies. They're like, okay, if we're gonna go heavy, let's do some weird melodic stuff. So their choices are really great. But Swim is the first single, and it's no nonsense. The video is hilarious. They're by a pool and everything, but the track is as serious as a heart attack. And it's pretty much just talking about the mosh pits at Fishbone shows, which is great. It's kind of an ode to the fans, if you will. But then when you think, okay, well, they can't get heavier than that, you hear Servitude, which is like, I think that's in seven or something. Two, five, six, seven. Yeah, I think it's in seven. But Servitude is incredible, ultra heavy tune. And the first line is, who do you serve? For whose empire and for whose whims? This really, really heavy stuff going on lyrically. And they show, Fishbone pretty much on this record shows that, oh, you guys are doing heavy stuff. Well, this is how you do heavy stuff and still groove and whatever else, which is just immense. This record blew me away, and a lot of my friends who were kind of rock guys that liked Fishbone but kind of saw them as light and airy. And I kept telling them, no, man, you should see them live. They're pretty heavy and whatever. When this record came out, they were very silent because they kind of were like, wow, I see what you're saying. And again, I saw them on this tour. They were fantastic. This was the Lollapalooza days. I got to see them actually jam at the Limelight, an after party where they played songs from this record, but they also had Lane Staley from Alice in Chains come up and jam with the band. It was a really terrific experience. So they were kind of in the midst of all these popular bands doing their thing. But I also want to mention that there's some great, like the melodic sensibility of this record is important because just making everything heavy doesn't necessarily mean it's good. But the songwriting is really heavy, also, and beautiful. Black Flowers talks about what's happening in the Black community and with young Black people dying before their time. It's really just gorgeous, and that's sung by Chris. You also have stuff like No Fear, which is one of my favorite Fishbone songs ever. Um, you know, Lightning crashes across the sky, but I have no fear. Beautiful, beautiful harmonies. Actually, very harkens me a lot to like late 60s harmonies, which is great over this kind of heavy grooving drum stuff and cool like late 60s, early 70s keyboardy kind of moments going on, counter melodies happening in the chorus time and pre-choruses. Then you have manic stuff like Drunk Schizo, which is absolutely out of their mind, nutso, almost like experimental, crazy stuff going on. And then there's End the Rain, which is incredible, also talking about like kind of trying to stop corporate control of the planet and to put people before profits. Just really, really terrific. So this record is, like I said, I will tell you, the songs are longer. So I call it a dense record. Dense not meaning bad, just like it's a lot sonically to take in. But if you allow yourself to kind of just sit back and really listen to it, it's a very powerful statement of intent. And I think it's aged really well. Production wise, it still jumps out of the stereo for me. So I love this record. I'm going to give this record a 4.5, solid 4.5.
All right. And your record looks terrific. You take good care of your records.
I
That's
do.
wonderful.
I do. I try.
All right. So, wouldn't you know it? My number four is also Give a monkey a brain, and he'll swear he's the center of the universe.
We didn't plan
And
this for real.
and
This is
it's their fourth album. It's from 1993, my favorite year in life. Yeah, this is a cool album. It's pretty heavy for much of the time, like metal heavy. There's also some ska, some punk, and lots of funk. It's a very socially conscious album, as can be expected from Fishbone. I find it to be less kaleidoscopic and more aggressive than previous album Reality. Swim is a badass opener, tribute to the mosh pits that formed at their shows, like you were saying. Very heavy. The song is loaded with extra voices, something I have complained about, but it works great in this case. Servitude and Black Flowers are also very heavy, very strong songs, especially Black Flowers. That one's just excellent. This is guitarist Kendall Jones' most metal forward performance on record. Unyielding Conditioning is an excellent ska tune with a great guitar solo. Unfortunately, I'm not too crazy about the funky properties of Propaganda, and especially not the frantic, the warmth of your breath, due to some gross lyrics that turn me off. Basically, if it has anything to do with the bathroom, I don't want to hear it. But the second side starts with Lemon Meringue, which sounds like a party, so funky and groovy, and I love the feel-good horns. In the Rain brings back the heavy with some wild lead guitar. I've read that a lot of people don't care for Drunk Schizo, and I think it's a fun blast of punk craziness.
I agree. Great song.
Yeah. And then it transforms into a lounge song. Pretty
Yep.
wild. No Fear is very good. And then the last track, Nut Megalomaniac, is the funkiest thing on the album. Love the bass. Monkey didn't do nearly as well commercially as the reality of my surroundings did. It was considered a failure. Two band members left after its release, and their record label dropped them. There are various reasons why all that happened. Apparently, Kendall lost his mind, according to Norwood, who tried to help the guy and wound up with kidnapping charges, later
Yeah.
dismissed. Um, and the relatively poor commercial performance of Give a Monkey contributed to the downfall. It's a shame because I find it to be a very strong album. There may be a limited audience for this sort of funk metal, though, and I doubt I'm the only one who got turned off by the scatological lyrics. 4 stars.
Yeah, a lot happened within the band at that time and what was going on with Kendall and so forth, which is a shame. But I agree with you. I think it's one of, again, like I said, I think that this album it aged really well. And I've noticed that a lot of people within the Fishbone kind of circle, as well as people that are discovering Fishbone, really who don't know anything about the band until more recently, and they picked up this record are like, oh my God, this album is amazing. So yeah, I feel like it's one of those records that aged well. Again, a dense record, but I think that it's the payoff is big. So okay, so in very different rating place, unfortunately, this album is not on vinyl at all, which I hope it is. And I couldn't reach my CD, but I hope that they put it out on vinyl sometime soon, especially because it's a great album cover, great everything. My number three is Chim Chim's Badass Revenge. Now, this will be, well, this, I should say, this will probably split the Fishbone familyhood, if you will. There are some people like me that absolutely adore this record. They got why the band got back together and toured and played this whole album in its entirety years ago. I got to see that, which was incredible. Um, But this album to me is the like one of the masterpieces in Fishbone's catalog. It's a strange, dark record, but it actually I think it's important to understand it's actually a concept album. A lot of people don't get that, but it's a, and I think that the label did not know what the hell to do with it. They were on Dallas Austin's imprint, which was distributed through Arista Records. And for those of you that are saying, wait, is Peter talking about Dallas Austin as in the guy who produced like TLC and like wrote Waterfalls and stuff like that or whatever? Yeah, that Dallas Austin, that kind of like guy. He's a great musician and he loved Fishbone. And so when Fishbone got dropped, as Rich had mentioned on the last record, he was like, listen, let's try to make a great album. And Fishbone, I think mentally, were going through a lot. They lost Kendall, who was one of their original band members. And they said, let's just make a really off the wall, cool concept record about the record industry and what it tries to do to artists and so forth. So, Chim Chim is this defiant monkey that is fighting against corporate greed and entities who are trying to gain political and like social control, of music, of art, of commerce, of everything. So that's why this record is called Chim Chim's Badass Revenge. Chim Chim is also embodying clearly Fishbone, right? So once you understand that, some of the talking and the little weird things that happen in between make much more sense. It's much more fun to listen to. Um, so I had been given a promo copy of it, and when I first got it, I was like, what is going on here? And then someone told me, I think this is a concept record. And I said, yeah, I'm picking up on that, but who is Chim Chim? And we started asking questions. It was kind of cool. We had the record a couple of, actually, I think I had the record almost a month maybe before it came out. So I had a lot of time to really listen and try to figure out things. I had no artwork, just listening to the record. So that being said, it's heavy, it's very introspective. It is a kind of crazy off the wall concept album. So it could, and to be honest with you, it's a bit angry. But as a fan growing up through it and knowing some of the drama that had gone on, I absolutely love it. And I'll talk about the things I love and the songs I love because I feel like the album, in it being angry, it's like them being unleashed. So it's kind of mad. It's like crazy. So things like Monkey Dick are out of control. Just like watching Fishbone show you like, here are my chops. I mean, the horn parts in Monkey Dick are insane, and the drumming, like, and the syncopation is out of control. I don't know very many groups that could pull that off to that degree. Songs like Rockstar, kind of condemning people that have like all these musicians that have so much and they act like rock stars and think they're above all this stuff. And then record companies kind of, salivating when these people die because they make money off of them after their death. So like just really, really heavy stuff. And then even things like Psychologically Overcast. It's one of my favorite Fishbone songs. I love the chorus. I love the lyric and what it's about and talking about like where you are mentally and how you can try to survive this kind of constant barrage of people not supporting your art and doing and supporting you as a person. The first line, Angela says, "You ask me if I'm unhappy. Well, I'm not fine." Just really, really like him being very honest as an artist. Like, I'm not cool with everything that's happened with me, and I'm millions of dollars in debt to a record label and whatever, and I have to still go up there and sing and try to do what I do. Really, really great. And having Bust on there is kind of, it's kind of funny. I always felt that was kind of a funny thing to do. I'm like you, I'm a Busta fan, and him being on the track was a cool idea, but I don't know if that was the right track for him to be on because I think the song was strong unto itself. It kind of I would have liked Busta doing something a little bit more crazy or wacky, but I got the idea. I think that they were trying. I think that was supposed to be a single, and they were trying to kind of make that like palpable for a single. Um, but especially because a lot of hard rock bands were kind of teaming up with hip hop artists at the time, so I think that was the thought behind that. But and then the opening track, Chim Chim's Bass Revenge, is just incredible, and we have a theremin being played like heavy and in your face. I think you mentioned Beer Gut before, another one just out of control. It's a punishing record. And I think that now that we can get some distance of it because it's been, whatever, almost 30 years, a song like In the Cube, which is a long song and heavy, but if you really listen to lyrically what's going on, they're basically talking about the band's history and what it did to band members psychologically and artistically and their souls. So I find this record to be very, very brutally honest. It's almost like you're tearing away, the stitching of a wound that hasn't healed, and we're like vomiting all out musically and doing it pretty brilliantly. So I love, love, love this record. Believe it or not, it would arguably be even maybe one higher. My biggest problem with the record, if I talk about my one criticism, is the production is very murky. And I get that they were trying to probably just capture this like live vibe, but I feel like if this same record was just produced, if the performances were the same, but it was produced more like reality, or even like the record before it, the Terry Date record, Give a Monkey a Brain, I think it would have hit people a lot harder immediately. When I saw this tour when it happened originally in '97, it was fantastic. I saw them out in Long Island and they were incredible. And I remember thinking, these songs should have been recorded like that because they did pretty much they did, I would say 70% of the record and then a bunch of older things. And those songs really jumped out at me in a different way. I mean, they opened up with Chim Chim's Badass Revenge and it was incredible from the top. Then when I got to see them years ago redo the whole record live, I was blown away. And I thought, I hope somebody, and I knew people were recording it. I was like, somebody needs to record this the way it is and just mix it and put it out. Because I definitely feel that people would rediscover the record and kind of hear it differently. But I love this album. Again, even with the murky production, which, like I said, gets in the way, I would probably put this record at a 4.5 as well. But I give it a nod ahead of Give a Monkey just because it's not as dense. And I think also, like we were talking, it's a little more eclectic, like classic Fishbone in a good way. Because they're kind of, whereas Give a Monkey a Brain is like really heavy with some like little spritzing of old Fishbone of old. This album to me is still heavy, but it's kind of exploring everything and being a little more wacky and unafraid again. So yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, that is something. I'm going to listen to that album again, keeping in mind what you had to say about it. That's something.
Yeah,
Uh,
they did a bad job, Rich, of nobody really did a good job of saying when you got the artwork and you read the liner notes of the CD, you then go, "Oh, wait a minute, this is a concept record." So they should have made the label should have made a big deal. Check out Fishbone's first concept album. Because I think that immediately because when you see the album cover, you see kind of like this cartoony monkey, and you're like, I
yeah.
don't know what this is about. But if they had played that up more as a listener, you go, okay, I get there's talking. This is kind of like a concept record. So I'm going to listen to it a little bit differently. You know,
Uh,
that was a record company fail with a capital F.
so my number three, here's where I finally have Nutworks. Fishbone and the Family Hood Next Appearance present the Psychotic Friends Nutworks, their sixth album from 2000. And I was just thinking, maybe I'm a little more tolerant of the commercial side of Fishbone than you are, which makes sense because you were there from the beginning and you saw them on stage, and um, that's definitely a different perspective from what I have. But I think this is a great album. It's a shame few people heard it. I guess the public at large was kind of done with Fishbone. The musical landscape had shifted and the ska revival was over. But it seems like Fishbone pushed hard for a comeback, enlisting a wide roster of celebrity guest musicians. They were going for a musical community vibe in the P-Funk tradition. Shaky Ground is a great opener, a Temptation song co-written by Funkadelic's Eddie Hazel. The Red Hot Chili Peppers band, without vocalist Anthony Kiedis, plays on it. Super funky. Next track, The Suffering, about post-breakup blues, has a great ska reggae feel, great call and response background vocals, and a great trumpet solo. Where Do You Get Those Pants really shows off how awesome a singer Angela Moore is. I like the Sly cover. Everyone is a Star, loaded with guest singers, including George Clinton, Gwen Stefani, Rick James, Perry Farrell, and Rose Stone. It's a great song, and this version is just a lot of fun. It gets frantic and rocked out at the end with some crazy fiddle. One Planet People has HR from Bad Brains, but gets a bit religious for my tastes. Still a very good tune. The second side of this album is incredibly strong. Just Allow is a great ska inflected rocker, while AIDS and Armageddon is straight up gold, sporting a killer guitar riff at the verses. It All Kept Starting Over Again has killer bass and Angelo busting out his theremin. Dear God begins with an amazing atmospheric intro, a prayer from someone in bad shape. And the final track, Karma Tsunami, is a very good, frantic ska tune. I don't believe in karma as a supernatural force, but we absolutely reap what we sow. The album ends with the sound of laughter from a baby, which I assume is symbolic of something like renewal, rebirth, or cyclical continuation. So this album was a big surprise. I didn't have high hopes going into it, considering how seemingly unpopular it was and is. But for me, this is excellent, 4.5 stars. And if I had been familiar with it since my teenage years, like Truth and Soul, who knows, maybe I'd go up even higher.
All right. Yeah, like I said, again, if I ranked that record just overall in terms of ranking just one's records outside, it would definitely be, I would have given it a higher ranking. But within the Fishbone canon, if I'm being like really hard, it just there's something about it that is too glossy. But again, an okay Fishbone record is still like head and shoulders above most people's records, you know. I think a lot of bands would love to have a record as good as that one. So yeah, I probably should revisit it again as well because to your point, it's kind of trying to do that P Funk kind of let me get a bunch of artists and collaborate and like even though we're Fishbone, we're kind of adding and taking away some elements and seeing what we come up with. So I applaud that, and I'm a big P Funk fan. So all right, my top two, Rich. These are people figured this out. So this was tough, but this EP, which we included, because this is kind of like we said, an extended EP, and we're at all this is ground zero, pardon the pun, for Fishbone. Here's the original one, and here's they did a beautiful reissue of it. If you don't have it on vinyl, they made only 1,000 of these, and they did a beautiful job. They put a whole gatefold sleeve, which is great because there are all these images of like their first gigs and things like that. Really beautiful job, and sonically, it's terrific. Sounds great. So I'm really pleased to have both of them. Um, this EP was just like a lightning bolt. It still stands out. It's fantastic because if you think about what was happening in 85, as I said before, it like they came out of left field and it was fantastic. And they kind of set that path for better or for worse. Um, It's fearless. I would argue that the EP is like this is the essential and quintessential EP extended play. It's like all six songs are fantastic, and they're great, and they're a little bit different, but they're just like it's perfectly put together. So whenever I think about when someone says, "Oh, I'm putting on an EP," I think I immediately go to that first Fishbone release, because that to me was like that set the bar for me, and I don't think it's ever been bettered as an EP. It's like you just want to flip it over. I remember it would just stay on your record player because you were like, these three songs are great. These three songs again are great. Flip it over again. Let's go. Because it went so well, and musically they were taking chances, and right away you knew that this band was kind of like putting their line in the sand. I mean, Ugly was just incredible and just like funny and hilarious. The production is great. It sounds like they're all playing in a room together, which they are. The energy level is like none other. It's literally this EP captures lightning in a bottle. It's so high energy. The melodies are fantastic though. From the first time you hear them, you remember these songs, and they become it's an understanding of why Fishbone became what they were. It was kind of a statement of purpose, like this is what we're about, and it's capturing pop, funk, punk, ska, big time. This is a pretty heavy ska leading record, although there are a lot of things that are not ska about it as well. Um, the guitars are on hard rock without sounding like very produced. This is also another example because David Kahn produced it, but this record um, has lasted a long time because I think he just kind of captured what they were doing. He mixed it as well, so he really kind of caught what they were about, like right off from the get. And every song is a classic. So you pretty much I've heard Fishbone throughout their years do everything from this record, like literally every song. I've seen them do the EP as an encore, which is brilliant. Pretty much just like, hey, we're doing this whole set, and then we're just going to do the EP, which is incredible.
Did
Um,
they have a guest female singer for the Lioness?
sometimes sometimes they do, and sometimes I've seen them where I saw them where they were pretty funny, where other members of the band were doing like funny falsetto stuff. I've seen them where they've had like crowd members do it because the songs are so well known, or they just they pick random women in the crowd singing the women's parts, which are great. Um, but yeah, it's just such a great record, and it's timeless, really. So another generation, Ugly, Party at Ground Zero, like I told you about Modern Industry. It has arguably the best ending song ever in Lying Ass Bitch, which is just fantastic. So I think that this record is not talked about enough, about how important and daring it was at the time, and I have to say it's a shame that Columbia kind of didn't realize what they had, because they signed a daring band and they should have just championed this band. You also figured out pretty early on in listening and recognizing when you were hearing other things play on the radio and then Fishbone wasn't. I started to realize, oh, okay, well, this is where racism, this is where like class. This is where like presumptions of what artists should be like or look like get in the way. If you look at the back album cover, which I always love, it's one of my favorite photos of Fishbone. If you think about it, that was 1985. It looked super cool. They looked badass. They were young and handsome and just incredible, incredible musicians. But they weren't an R&B band. They weren't like a funk band. They were kind of creating their own sound. And they should have, these songs are pop songs, just masked in different things. But because of that, I think that got in the way. And it must have been very frustrating for them. And, I definitely, as a fan, I was frustrated that I was like, I'd hear Fishbone, I'd be like, why are these bands getting more popular? And even, we were talking about Gwen Stefani, who is a huge Fishbone fan, no doubt. We're huge Fishbone fans. I love that she sang on Everybody is a Star. But if you guys remember one of the No Doubt videos, I don't remember which song, has Angela in the video. She runs into him and he's coming out of a store holding a newspaper or something in one of their big videos. It was very much to be like, yo, this is where we got this from. you, you know, check them out. They were like super important. And it baffles me still whenever I listen to the EP, like how isn't this the biggest selling thing ever? My only criticism, it wasn't a full length record because I know they had the songs. If you haven't checked it out, Rich, there's a great collection that Columbia did, a two CD collection of like their greatest hits, but they put a bunch of the songs that were recorded for around the EP's time and a lot of B sides and a lot of cool demo versions. But there are a lot of great songs on there. One of them is called "And They Prey on You," Prey. Just some great stuff that kind of was floating in between the EP all the way through like Truth and Soul and stuff like that. But there were a bunch of songs that were supposed to be on this first album that they just said, well, let's make it an EP. But I wonder what it would have been like if it came out as a full length. But that's my only criticism. I
You
have
know
to
what? I
say,
had a compilation. It was sort of like an anthology. It had
mhm,
a sort of a tan
yes,
cover, and it looked like fossils.
that's the
Yeah,
record. If
yeah,
you,
I had that. Yeah, so I've heard that
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, it's great. Like a lot of stuff, like sometimes you'd be like, why? Like Fishbone is Red Hot, which they used to do live all the time. Um, the song Fishbone is Red Hot, they still, when you see them live, they very often, it's a part of the chant or they go into that track. That was supposed to be, I think that's dating back from their first album. So, or EP. So anyway, but this is incredible. It's an essential record for anybody. So I would I'm teetering on giving this a 5.0, but I'm going to give it a 4.8 only because it's an EP. But that's the only reason why.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Um, I don't really, well, anyway, I'll just get to it. Yeah, we line up again. Fishbone, the debut EP. It's from 1985. And I agree. What we have here is lightning in a bottle. Fishbone explode onto the scene with a terrific set of songs. They were so young when they made this. I think they were still teenagers. And
Early 20s. Yeah, they were
yeah,
young.
and okay, still very young. And they were one of the first to blend ska, punk, and funk. Opener Ugly begins with an amusing farty bass intro before blasting off into an upbeat ska tune that nods to Chuck Berry's Johnny B. Good. I'm really not crazy about lyrics that attack others based on their looks, but I still really dig the song, so it feels a bit like a guilty pleasure, I guess. Modern industry is very repetitive and goes wild with the sound of changing stations and multi-tracked vocals, and it totally works. I love it. Party at Ground Zero is gold. I think they should have made it the first song, though, because it's such a brilliant statement of purpose. VTTLOTFDGF is a groovy song that stands for Voyage to the Land of Freeze-Dried Godzilla Farts. It imagines a scenario in which the US government lied about dropping atomic bombs on Japan and blamed it on Godzilla instead, which makes me suspect that substances were involved in the making of this song. I don't know, but that's pretty far out. And
Dirty Walt was the lead vocal on that too, so that's good to mention.
the last track, Lioness Bitch, like we've been saying, is absolute gold. The female guest vocals are perfect. Fishbone were great right out of the gate. 5 stars.
Yeah, it's deserving of it. You know what I would say to you though, Rich? Ugly to me, I never thought about the physical because ugly is actually, if you look at the lyrics, it's actually talking more about the ugliness of the person. Even though the chant UGLA, is supposed to be talking about the way you look, but what I like about it is that it's actually talking about the ugliness of people and what they do. So
Okay, so I may need an attitude adjustment when approaching that song.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So all right. So here we are at number one. Unsurprisingly, the reality of my surroundings. Right. I always love this album cover too because the vinyl. This is actually like a full picture, which I love. I love when records kind of do that. Um, this record is life changing for me. I was a huge Fishbone fan, and then this record came out, and totally, it blew me away when they were doing a lot of the songs. When I got, as I mentioned earlier, I got to see them live do many of these songs before the album came out, and I saw them so much on this tour. Actually, they toured for this record for quite a bit, and the hopes were high because I would argue that Fishbone's Reality of My Surroundings, this is like their Sergeant Pepper's. This is like to me, Fishbone doing, Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On" or Sly and the Family Stone's "There's a Riot Going On," which was responding to that, right? But it came out in '91, and it's very very poignant. And what's frightening is that 35 years later, this record is just as poignant. This is the original pressing. I think that they're coming out with a new one, which I hope they do. Um, but this record hit me like that. Very, very moving, very, very poignant lyrics. Very much like, just like the title, the reality of my surroundings. Like what's going on around me? What is this reality, and where do I fit in this, and what upsets me, and what are some things that are like funny, whether it be like housework, which is funny, right? And you being a kid and not wanting to just go out and play with your friends, but your parents are like, you got housework to do, you have chores. I love that playfulness that you feel in that track. And you can, and I was in college when this came out. I was like, oh yeah, this is when I was a kid, and I couldn't go out and do anything until I got like these chores done. And you can that playfulness, but then something like So Many Millions, your education will do me no good in my neighborhood. Just heavy, heavy stuff. Um, just beautifully said. It's a daring record. It's unafraid. It's really deep. It's heavy. It's reflective, but it's also hopeful in it too, which is hard to be when you're living in those circumstances. So when you have stuff like "Fight the Youth," which is a really heavy opening track, it's incredible. You're going on a journey right away. There's kind of like this long intro, which is a bit different than a lot of other Fishbone records. I remember, when you think about Freddie's Dead, which opened Truth and Soul, the album before this, and then versus like where they kind of were going right afterwards, you knew, okay, this is going to be a lot heavier on a bunch of levels, and musically, it's a lot deeper, and they're really going for it. I know you mentioned some of these things before, but I agree with you. Those days are gone. When the next to last song on the album, absolute gold, incredible lyric. Chris Dowd is singing on that. Just really great, great song, and really cool for Fishbone, doing some cool psychedelic stuff. Um, Everyday Sunshine, although it was played a lot, and the company thought that that was going to be the hit, it should have been a hit. It's just a beautiful song and a sentiment. I love it because I love hearing all of Fishbone singing. It's very Sly and the Family Stone. It goes into a gospel rave up part at the end, which is just brilliant. Now, when we hear songs like that, we think, oh, yeah, cool. But at the time in '91, that wasn't really happening. So, again, Fishbone was always kind of leading their own path sonically, the way they looked. I love everything about this record. I loved what they were about. It felt like they were really taking over. I remember their appearance in Saturday Night Live where they absolutely destroyed, and Angela's doing backflips on the stage, and it was almost too much for people to take on. They were just really incredible, and they were as sharp as they could be live on this tour. And you could tell that they really believed in the music, in a way that was special. They knew that they made and like a really ultimate musical statement with this record. And so I could understand the disappointment that came and the vibe that came with a couple records afterwards, lyrically, after pouring your heart and soul in this. But melodically, this record is full of great stuff. I could just go on wax poetic about, but I won't do too much. I will say that I think Sunless Saturday is one of the most incredible songs ever written by anyone. The video was great, even it was shot by Spike Lee. Um, but this record is just tremendous. It meant a lot to I just to let you know, and when it came out, it definitely was one of those records that sent a shockwave to a lot of the hard rock and punk artists and like artists that were listening to Fishbone. We were all like, wow, we were blown away by it. This was also a cool record because I felt a lot of people that hadn't listened to Fishbone at all of a sudden started saying, "Hey, what's this band about?" And they were checking out. Kendall's guitar playing and songwriting on this are great. It made me, on reflection, makes me miss them even more. It should be noted also that John Bingham, who was playing with Miles Davis, became the second guitar player in the band before this, about a year before this album came out. So I'd seen him tour and just thought, oh, he's this extra guitar player. But he actually co-writes a few things here. And because he was an arranger dealing with Miles, he had I think that he definitely brought a certain influence there too, because the record is kind of mapped out in a really cool way. So this is to me the ultimate Fishbone statement, and I would argue easily one of the top records of the '90s, one of my favorite records ever made. Period. Um, and I think that also just going, I know that you'd mentioned a little bit of some of the crazy like if I were I'd. Um, Actually, when I saw them live, they actually played them like those shorts before this record came out. So they were always these kind of like funny bursts that they put out. I thought that was clever, a really cool way of kind of like bookending the record. I think it happens like four times throughout. So a lot of fun in doing that and clever in doing that. But again, this is most definitely, I think, their richest kind of more um, out there record that to me was the first time that I felt like they sounded as big as they were alive on record. And that was really clever for me. I feel like you have every element of what Fishbone is about, but also production wise and sonically, it was this full, rich statement. And I think people really responded to that. And unfortunately, I think that still think the label should have done a lot more. I think they kind of just thought, oh, the music's great. We'll put out these really beautiful videos, which they did. Everyday Sunshine was a great video. Like I said, Fight the Youth, I think had a short, but definitely I know Sunless Saturday did. Um, I just kind of felt like they should have done a little bit more with them in terms of like the live thing and in terms of who they opened up for. But this is the record to me.
Yeah, I get that. I'm not surprised that it's your number one, but yeah, that's fantastic stuff, Peter. Really good. So, yeah, my number one is Truth and Soul, their second album. It came out in 1988, the year I graduated high school. I can't help the extreme bias I have toward this album.
Agreed.
I had it on CD early on, and I've listened to it more than any other Fishbone album by far. Pretty much the whole thing is gold to me. The band is firing on all cylinders musically, politically, and emotionally. Opener Freddy's Dead sounds so great, with the orchestra found on the original replaced with some heavy guitar muscle. I do prefer the Fishbone version over the original Curtis Mayfield, but in fairness, I did hear the Fishbone phone the in fairness, I did hear the Fishbone version first, so that could have something to do with it. Ma and Pa, what a great energetic ska tune. Sadly, Ma and Pa don't get along. The energy level dips down a bit on the more subdued pouring rain, while elsewhere we get heated blasts of punk. Bonin in the Boneyard is a highlight. The bass from Norwood Fisher is just sick, off the chain. I love how it totally jams along and then pauses for a split second to hit that low bass note. So cool. One Day is also a highlight, just an addictive song. Great beat, Love the guitar solo worthy of Van Halen. Subliminal fascism rages about encroaching authoritarianism in the government, more relevant than ever today. And Slow Bus Moving, Howard Beach Party chronicles our racist past and has a stinging message for racists. Ghetto Soundwave is so great, maybe my favorite on the album. It's
Likewise.
very upbeat and fun, but it's also an expose on poor living conditions in the ghetto and essentially a plea for equality. Very Fishbone. And then the last track is a sweet acoustic plea for change, titled Change. Truth and Soul is an easy 5 stars for me, an easy number one.
Yeah, I'm really glad. Also, I didn't get to mention Change. You know, when as you were talking and going through the different songs on Truth and Soul, you know, the video even for Get Freddy's Dead was great, but that was, I believe, like the only video. And it makes me wonder, you named all of these great songs, because that album, when I think about Truth and Soul, I think about just like there's so many songs that could have been great singles and big singles. Like even something like Change is a beautiful ballad, but powerful. Um, Ghetto Soundwave could have been a great video, but even stuff like Mighty Long Way or like Ma
Yeah,
and Pa, like you know, it just there were so many songs on the album. There should have been like three or four singles with videos because I think that that would have done just as I feel that later on for Fishbone too. But on that album, especially because it was like the late '80s, right? I think if they had done really cool, punchy videos for other songs, I think that album would have done it would have gone at least gold. Because I know it sold a few 100,000 copies, but most of the time was that people just word of mouth. Everyone saying,
yeah,
"Hey, Fishbone," or "Do you know this record?" But if they had really promoted it right, you know, whatever, it is water under the bridge. But
yeah.
as you were talking about all these songs, like these are all hit songs, you know.
Yeah, I guess it was always going to be a struggle because they're so far off the beaten path. But it is frustrating that they weren't promoted more. Um, one of them, I think, Norwood, expressed in an interview that he was frustrated about how hard it was to reach the black community. They just are tuned into different kind of music. And it was just harder to make that connection. Um, but anyway, wow, what a fantastic group. So are you ready to do top 10 Fishbone songs?
Sure.
Now, if
I
you want, we can alternate back and forth, or you can just list yours off. How do you want to do it?
Either or, we can go back and forth. It's your call. I also have. It was really hard. Like this was really hard, Rich. So I did my top 20, and then I said, okay, what I'm going to do is just I'll do like I'll have my top 10, and then I can do my honorable mentions later.
Okay. Yeah. So let's go back and forth. Go ahead and start with your number 10.
Okay, my number 10 is Skanking to the Beat, which is actually not on a Fishbone album. It's on the, I think it's on the Less Than Zero soundtrack, but it's also on you can get on the best of compilations and live. They almost always do it. So I always see it as like one of their best.
Okay, cool. My number 10 is When Problems Arise from In Your Face, the first track on their first album. Very catchy and a fun video.
Hmm. I like Angela Hula dancing in that video with the Hula girls. It's great. So my number nine is kind of I wanted to include it because it's such a fun, crazy track and got me excited about them again. So my number nine is Jackass Brigade from Still Stuck in Your Throat. Love it. Just a fun, I love that it is this ridiculous donkey sound that they're going against.
Oh,
And
yeah, I remember that.
yeah, it's intense. Love it.
Cool. All right. My number 9 is from the debut EP, Lioness Bitch. Probably their most melodically pleasing song, I would say. Just, ooh, incredible. Just a powerhouse song. I love it.
Yep. My number eight is Hide Behind My Glasses, which is again from the Set the Booty Up Right EP, but it's happening around the time of Truth and Soul. It's recorded during those sessions.
All right. I've got some gaps in my Fishbone listening that I need to fill.
You'll if you get that EP, I tell everyone watching this that likes Fishbone, other than the first EP, which everyone should get Set the Booty Up Right, especially if, and Rich, you're a huge, as many people are, Truth and Soul fans. You have to get that because those songs were, first of all, they're played as much live if you go see them as a lot of the songs on Truth and Soul. Plus, they're great. They're recorded in those sessions. So,
Mm.
yeah, hide behind my glasses. The line is, I like to hide behind my glasses so I can give them all dirty looks.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's a great song.
Um, yeah, and it's been a long time since I heard that compilation we were talking about. So I need to go back to that as well. But anyway, my number eight is from the reality of my surroundings, Sunless Saturday. Just a powerful, very sophisticated tune. Really amazing.
I agree. I want to represent some of the other weirder songs, but number seven is Rockstar, which is like a manic indictment of everything going on. We talked about that, and that's on Chim Chims.
Okay, cool. My number seven, I had to get this one on. Party at Ground Zero, the debut single. A perfect party anthem for Fishbone. Enough said.
My number six is No Fear from Give a Monkey a Brain.
All right. My number six is from Truth and Soul, Ma and Pa. Devastating lyrics about a family tearing apart, yet catchy as hell.
Yeah, my number five is I mentioned it before, Psychologically Overcast. It's also from Chim Chims. I just think it has like such an infectious, really cool chorus and pre-chorus. I love it. Love the way the song builds, and I love that there are these like vocals in the background throughout the whole tune, kind of carrying it. It's almost like a P-funk kind of harmony thing going on underneath the whole time. It's just great. Love it.
All right. Well, my number five is also from Chim Chim's Badass Revenge. I've got Alcoholic. Very cool song. Love the tempo changes. That's all I got.
Yep, great tune. Number four is Love and Bullshit, also from the Set the Booty Up Right EP and also from the Truth and Soul sessions, it's a funny, crazy song. I don't think it's even 2 minutes long. It's really great.
Cool. All right. My number four is Swim from Give a Monkey. Just a monster. This this is one where the multi-tracked vocals are very effective, just really trippy. Awesome song.
Yeah, I agree. Swim is just, yeah, I love that song. Okay, where am I? Yes, number three, Lying Ass Bitch had to be in the
Yeah.
top three. Just incredible way to end an incredible EP, and just the whole ending where Angela just goes lying piece of sack of, and just incredible. Such a cool song that the way he says bitch kind of and inflects it was sampled by Prince, and he used the on his track Billy Jack Bitch from the Gold Experience. He samples Angelo saying bitch, and he throws it in every chorus. It's fantastic and such a cool nod to be like, I mean, getting a nod from Prince in a sample who Prince rarely sampled. So he deliberately was like, you should know them.
That's
Such a great
awesome.
cool thing. Yeah. But I love Lying Ass Bitch. Great song.
All right. Um, My number three is from Truth and Soul, Ghetto Sound Wave. Just a powerful plea for equality, groovy and catchy as all get out.
Absolutely. You named a couple, like, so I'm going to just say a few before I give my last two. So a lot of my top 20, you put Ghetto Soundwave, Ma and Pa, Party at Ground Zero. All three of those are on my and Swim. Those are all on my like my 11 to 20. All great songs. My number two is also from Give a Monkey a Brain, Servitude. Just think it's just an incredible song. I love the time, the vibe that they're doing. They're playing with time, and I love the heaviness of it. I love the lyric, love the low harmonies and the awesome Fishbone stuff come chorus time. Just absolutely terrific. Great song.
All right, my number two, another one from Truth and Soul. I've got One Day.
Uh,
And for me, this song is just addictive. I'll hit that repeat button with this song. And I'm crazy about that beat. It
mhm.
is just, it's a very upbeat, feel-good song. Love it.
Yep, great song. So my number one probably isn't surprising, but I just think it was so undeniable for me, especially because I felt I picked a couple of wackier ones in the top 10, but I couldn't deny my number one Fishbone song. If I have to someone saying gun to your head, top Fishbone song, Sunless Saturday. I just I think Sunless Saturday has all elements, it like encompasses all elements of what makes Fishbone great. The lyrics are incredible. Kendall he wrote that song. The guitar playing is great. The drumming and bass are incredible. The band, the energy is high. The vocals, the 4 or 5 part harmony on the choruses and the pre-choruses, "Freedom Comes for Us Now," just always, oh. And then the whole trumpet part at the end, just like a clarion call, just an incredible, incredible song. And I love that it ends the record, because we're going through this whole trip in reality of my surroundings and a lot of the things we're talking about, whether it be drug addiction or just not having funding in your neighborhood, the kind of the racism you face, the struggle in general, and to end with Sunless Saturday, like just really remarkable and such a powerful song and so important because I think you can get caught up in the mire of like everything falling apart and to have like that kind of feeling like despite all this, we're getting out. And I love it. Whenever I hear I could have the worst day ever and I hear a Sunless Saturday, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be all right. Everything's all right. You know? Great song.
Yeah, that's one for the ages. My number one, it's got to be Bonin' in the Boneyard from Truth and Soul. Seriously sick bass work. Just makes me dance like a maniac.
I love it. That's a great pick for number
Yeah.
one. I
I,
have a
I
few
only
other.
I only included one honorable mention. I've got Freddy's Dead, which might have been my number one, but disqualified because it's a cover.
Yeah, I have a couple of those. Like Freddie's Dead was one. They also do a great cover that Walter sings. They do Parliament Funkadelics, The Goose, and they do a great cover. It's actually on that compilation. I think it ends the second disc. They do a great cover of The Goose. It's not an album, but I love a lot of those covers that they do. They don't do a ton, but when they do, they're great. I want to just mention a few. You
Sure.
picked a lot of them, so that was great. Um, I definitely suckered by Sabotage on the new album. I totally, it's one of those songs that like I'll hear the chorus will come into my head. I'm like, wow, and it's stuck all day. So I still have it kind of floating in my head from this morning. We both mentioned a movement in the light, which I think is a beautiful, gorgeous side to Fishbone. I'd love to hear more of that. You know, I would also say "It's a Wonderful Life," which is the main kickoff on their EP. It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Christmas EP with like Slick Nick, You Devil You and stuff. It's fun. But It's a Wonderful Life is a great up tempo Fishbone song. And by the way, there's a great video for it, believe it or not, which is kind of interesting too. It's great. And then
I caught
we,
that one, by the way.
yeah,
I caught
yeah,
that
yeah.
one.
And we mentioned a lot of the other ones, but I also want to say "Swinging in the Name of Swing" is just absolutely awesome too. It's a really great, short, punchy song. Again, from the Truth and Soul sessions on that EP, which like I said, had there been a few more songs, I really see it when we listen to it. You should listen to it as in the context of Truth and Soul. And I hear Rich, and I just actually discovered this one because we were researching for today. Um, I didn't realize this, but the original Japanese pressings on the CD only, obviously because they couldn't fit on the vinyl, of Truth and Soul actually have um, a couple of the songs from them mentioning from that EP. They actually have Hide Behind My Glasses and what was the other one? No, and Swinging in the Name of Swing, I think are both on there. There may be one that also has Love and Bullshit but those songs are actually on Truth and Soul. If you look up the Japanese pressing, and they're not just like tacked on at the end, they're actually in the record. I think as they were trying to negotiate, can we put that on the American version? I guess the powers that be were like, no, no, keep it short like the record. But those songs actually are there. So I saw the listing. I was like, wow, I should check out this, I should try to put them together like that. Or if anyone's listening out there, someone should reissue Truth and Soul, which they reissued it on vinyl, colored vinyl, but someone should do a deluxe version. Sony should do a deluxe version of Truth and Soul and set it right because I think it's actually really cool.
That would be
Um,
amazing.
right? We should totally do that. So we'll see.
Cool. All right. Well, anything you want to say before we sign off, Peter?
No, my brother, I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about like one of the greatest bands ever. I'm really
Yeah.
glad we did this. And also, I'm hoping that folks check this out and they listen to a lot of, start re-listening to Fishbone that they like. If they don't know the band, they should check them out. If they only know like an album or a few songs, they should check them out. And also for people that are big Fishbone fans, if you don't know some of the B-sides we're talking about or don't know some of the EPs, check it all out. It's really worth it. And lastly, I want to say I hope everyone listens to the last Fishbone record and goes out and grabs it. I don't know. I think you can stream it, but if not, definitely, order it from them because it's really worthy of listening to and it's very cool that they're still around with us.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Peter. It was a blast. It always is.
It is.
Peace out, y'all. Have a good one. Yeah, we're talking about dreams, and decades ago, like when I was in my early 20s, I had a really weird dream where I in my dream I was waking up, and so I woke up, but I wasn't really awake, and my brain kind of went into panic mode, and it was like trying to wake me up, and I kept on going. It was like taking a breath after uh, going up for air in a pool, something like that.
Oh,
And but I just didn't wake up, and I panicked so bad. And but I finally did jolt myself awake.
good.
But that was a miserable experience.
Sounds like it. Yeah, I feel like, and dreams are just so. after heavy things go on, dreams can be really frightening. They can be really wonderful too,
Yeah.
but it's a whole other, level. I definitely feel like there's totally subconscious stuff going on that we don't know, and how they guide us. I need to do a lot more reading about dreams. Um, but a
Have
lot.
dreams ever inspired your music?
Yeah, I mean, what's weird is that sometimes I've had things where I've written down things, because I'm not really good at remembering dreams. I remember how I feel. Like I'll wake up and be like, that wasn't cool, or oh, that felt really good, or something really nice happened, or that was really strange, which is actually a lot of more of my dreams. But so sometimes I write down the feeling I have. Sometimes I've had on one of the more recent records I've worked on, I had a melodic thing going on in my dream, and I thought it was a song. Sometimes, songs come into your dreams that you love, or music or whatever. And I wrote down this whole lyric, and I was singing it, and I was pretty sure I said, "Oh, okay, I got to figure out what song this is." And I realized it wasn't a song. It was like your song. You have this melody. It was kind of something, I don't know, gifted to you, or your subconscious was awake, or whatever. So yeah, it was very cool. Actually, it became the basis of one of the new things I'm working on, which was really cool. It's happened in the past to me where I'm like, did I write that? Is that, did I just write that? So, but I think it goes back to the idea of your subconscious always working. And if you're asleep, there's elements of it that are open. And in my case, I've been writing a lot. So I feel like maybe somehow in what I was doing, my subconscious was still open in writing musically, and it just kept working even though my body was physically asleep. So that's really cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
neat stuff like that. I hear all sorts of really great stories about dreams and people writing stuff, so
Hmm.
makes sense.
Very interesting. Unfortunately, the landscaping guys are around my apartment this morning. It seems like they come here way too often. I don't get it. But let me know if you hear any noise,
I don't
and we
hear any.
might have to just take a few minutes to let the guy, blow out the parking lot or whatever he's got to do.
Sounds
Um,
cool.
I find that outside noises usually don't register that much, so we should be okay. But so do you want to go ahead and jump into this, or
Yeah, Rich,
ready to go?
I'm super
Okay.
excited. It's been way too long since we've talked about,
Yeah.
and we picked one of my really all-time top faves. So I'm really excited
Okay. All right. Well, be sure to mention that in the video.
for sure.
So we're gonna go ahead and get started here, and that'll do it. That was great.
Yeah, that was great, Rich. Really cool.
Yeah. I hope I didn't offend you too much with my unorthodox position of reality.
No, totally no. And likewise, I actually think that it's really cool to hear. I mean, it's cool that like you weren't like following him like that. So I think it's cool. And I know that people probably there are going to be a bunch of people that say, "Oh man, he like put Chim Chims, over Truth and Soul. How dare he?" So it's okay.
Yeah.
It's really cool. But I mean,
Yeah, it's not anything to take seriously, is it?
no, it's fun. And actually it's cool. It was interesting hearing you like when I get off with you, I'm going to try to if I can get to my CDs at some point, I'm going to whip out that Fishbone, Familyhood record that you liked. You listened to it differently than I did. So it's cool for me to revisit, after even though I tried. Sometimes, how records are.
Yeah.
Sometimes you put them on and they don't connect. I had a record recently. Can't remember what it was, but it was something I was listening to that I didn't like in the day at all. It was an artist I liked, and I wasn't so crazy about it. And then for some reason, I saw it in my collection. I said, let me try this again. And I listened to it, and I ended up liking it a lot more than I remembered it. And that's kind of the beauty about art and music and stuff is like you can kind of go back to it and re-examine it. And
Yeah.
maybe sometimes you're in a different place. Like I was mentioning about In Your Face, when I was young, I was kind of like, oh, this isn't rock like the EP, and I kind of let it alone. And then like months later, I checked out. I was like, this is actually a great record. It's just like it wasn't what I expected, which
Yeah,
is and that's okay because they're artists. They're supposed to do what they want to do, and you're supposed to check it out and like kind of appreciate it for what it is and decide if you dig it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. You
Anyway,
got to
dude,
let albums be what they are, not what you want them to be or what your preconceived notions were.
absolutely,
Um, yeah,
absolutely.
and sometimes it just takes time. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I was a big Rush fan, and I got like Grace Under Pressure or something, and it just kind of sounded the same all the way through, and it took multiple listens for each song to take on their own identity, and that's just kind of the way our brains work. I actually have gotten a lot better at digesting albums quickly, and in
Mhm.
my community, we have different games and stuff like some of us are going through every single year and picking out an album. And there's about 15 of us. We each pick an album. We're on 2018 right now. We're going backwards.
Wow.
And it's so I listen to um, maybe two or three albums a day. There's people that can do a lot more, but I'm really dedicated to checking out a lot of different kinds of music, but ranking videos are the most fun for me. I just to be able to check out an artist or a band and give them a thorough assessment and ranking the videos just helps me. I appreciate them more because I got to talk about them. I got to, well, why do I think this? And
Right.
you know, so
Right. It also, to your point about ranking, what I like about doing ranking videos too is that sometimes, it's very easy to kind of go with the crowd. Like, well, everyone likes this record because, it's sold the most or it's the most popular or it has a song or whatever. But in ranking, when you, like you said, if you go through like we're going track by track, justify your ranking. Why is it there?
yeah.
Um, a lot of times you go track by track and then you start saying, actually, I think I like this record more. I know this is the one that everyone says to go to, but I find myself, I listen, all right, like you connect with a record differently. And
Mhm.
that's the beauty of it. So it's cool, it's like even though the ranking might be different, it's like, oh well, Rich connects with this record differently than Peter does, and Peter likes this record, but we can still talk about it within the canon, which is
Yeah.
really fun, and that's cool. I love that. So, you mentioned Rushman. Have you done a Rush ranking video already, or
Yeah, I
no?
did. Yeah. I did it with this kid. He goes by Sword. His YouTube name is Sword Slicer 56, I believe. So we just call him Sword, and he did a good job. That's a pretty fun video.
I have to check that out.
Yeah. What was I going to say? My mind just went blank. We were talking about listening to records. Oh yeah. So when I get a new record, I just play it. I don't try to think about numbers and stuff. I just try to let it hit me, clear my mind, let it hit me. And due to the nature of my business, I have to be able to answer texts right away and stuff. So I often don't have the luxury of sitting through an album front to back. That's just the reality I have to live with. Oftentimes I do, and like late at night, I can get away with it. But then I write down every song in a notebook. And when I listen to them again, two or three times, I will give a rating to every single song. Or if it's an interlude or something, I'll make a note of that. And, maybe it won't get included in my tally, but I come up with a tally, an average, a song average, and that will help guide how I rate the album. Now, the rating doesn't always perfectly reflect the song average. It might it might be higher to the average due to some five-star songs that are stellar, or uh, could be lower due to some bombs, you know.
Right, right,
But
right.
that's my particular method, and I will listen to songs over and over again until I figure out exactly how I feel about them. You know, sometimes it takes a while. And, you know, some people are very strict about listening habits, you know. Oh, you got to hear the album front to back and no breaks. And that's just not always feasible for me. So I have to do it my own way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Like, I think that there are some modern records are a little bit different in checking that out because I think that a lot of modern releases are kind of made to be a mixture of like singles. You know, they're kind of almost like a compiled or a compilation of singles, and they
Yeah.
kind of make a record out of it, particularly pop artists, which I think is a shame. Um, but yeah, I definitely try to listen to sides. You know what I mean? Like, you know, five
Yeah.
or six songs in a row. And then like you, there's some days, like my days are usually pretty free. Like, but if I want to be an active listener, I try to listen to at least a side. And then if I have to do some stuff, you know, I might send emails or whatever. And then when I'm eating or something where I can just listen, I'll listen to the other side kind of thing because um, I try to kind of get like what's the flow here, you know, what was the intent,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, it's a fun thing. And late in the evenings are always great. But I find that like a lot of records come the 90s start to change a bit, like come the late 90s, maybe early 2000s, where again it's like a singles game, almost too much. So
Yeah. A lot of those 90s albums that were, you know, in CD form and just like maxed out almost, you know, they really, that was the era where they really crammed songs onto albums. And
almost
so
too much.
that created problems for the vinyl version. And,
Absolutely.
you know, a lot of those albums deserve to be double albums, but, you know, they ended up with cutting songs and stuff so they could fit on a single album,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
sucks.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. You know, so thankfully, a lot of the better records are being salvaged, where, as you said, they're like reissuing them as double vinyl, which is great. You know, it's better sonically. You know, you're
Uh-huh.
listening, the grooves are wider and so forth. Plus, you can like really listen to the entire record and not lose anything. So that's fun, you know. So anyway, Rich, I'll let you go because I know how busy you are, but thank you so much, man.
You're busy. I
Let me
got plenty of time, unfortunately, but I need to get some lunch here. So,
Yeah. So
but
let's stay in contact and let me know if you have another group in mind or whatever in the coming weeks, or if you have something that strikes you after, you know, we've put this out.
okay, we talked about Sunny Day real estate. We don't have to do that. I don't know if that's really the best choice, but
They're a great band. They just don't have a lot of records.
yeah, but that might be good to make a shorter video.
Yeah, we could do a shorter one. Fishbone's a nice like that kind of what are they like nine? They had nine
Yeah,
albums.
yeah, it was
That's kind of
perfect.
good. Yeah, 9 to 10 records are really great because you can kind of sink your teeth into it and kind of, you know, do
Yeah.
whatever.
All right.
Although,
Well, let's think about it, you know, and if you come up with something else, we'll talk about it. If you want, make a list of possibilities.
sure.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, it's so good to see you, Peter. Good
Likewise, my
luck on the
brother.
music front. Can't wait to hear what comes next.
Thanks, brother. I'll
All
talk to you
right,
soon.
we'll see you.
Have a good
Bye.
weekend.